My name is Jacqueline Velis. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I am the project manager of Conductor and the public programs manager here at Powerhouse Arts. And I have the great honor of introducing our last conversation of the evening, which is probably why we were a little tardy. It's like when you don't want good things to end, you just run away from the goodbyes. Maybe that's what this was. But I have from left to right our moderator, Emanuel Admassu. I have artist Jean Shin, Khaled Jarrar, who is featured as a special project in our Grand Hall, and of course, Sana Frini, who is the artist behind the House of Silence. We're really excited about this conversation, thinking about what makes a place, and as we get ready to go back to wherever it is that we came from in our parts of the world, parts of New York City, parts of the country, let's continue thinking about how we're making place or unmaking place. Thank you so much.
All right. So first of all, I'll just start by saying this is one of my favorite activities, getting to speak to artists about a set of questions that animate my own creative practice as well. So before I get started, just saying thank you to Powerhouse Arts for holding this space for us to have this conversation, specifically at this moment in time. So thank you, Jackie, Dia, Eric, and everyone involved in putting this panel together. So I thought maybe we can start broad and zoom in. And I've just been trying to think through this question of place. Obviously, all three of your creative practices engage with this question of place. But it seems to me that you engage with questions of place through specific material realities. Sometimes it's concrete, sometimes it's plastic, sometimes it's earth. And it seems as if there is an attempt to find some sort of tangible representation of larger planetary scale political and environmental forces. So I was thinking maybe we can start with that, how you define place. What does place mean to you and to your creative practice? Do you want to start, Jean?
Well, thank you so much, and thank you, Powerhouse, and this whole great team, and those who've gathered today for a topic I think we hold so dear, and it's hard to define. So for me, it's being site-specific, so naming and being and having firsthand experience with the place, right? But then there's histories that are revealed slowly and also erased. And so I think it's interesting to think about research and talking with people who are currently there or have memory of a different kind of histories. I also think of place not only with people in mind, but in terms of other species who also cohabitate with us. And so I've, in most recent projects, tried to decenter the human experience for us to engage with endangered species, species that fly, species that are underwater. And of course, the place comes with material resources. Often I am profoundly shaped by the materials that are left behind, materials that are displaced. And so I use these local resources as the starting point of making a very large-scale transformative experience for the viewers who come to this place.
I wrote like a little something this morning. And first, hi everyone. And I'm really like feel the pressure and the honor to be here with you, and I would love to show like a really huge like gratitude to Powerhouse for like having me and understand my like language barrier to move in this city 3 years ago, and then I met Powerhouse team like 2 years ago where I started this project that I'm showing here. So I had the seed, and the seed needed like really like a good soil, and it's needed to be in harsh condition to grow and to be the trees you saw here. Or if you don't see it, please come and watch my trees. It is the tree of life, the tree of joy, the tree of love. And one of our great fighters, he said, I quote, our love to our Ardh. Ardh in Arabic means earth. And if you translate it to English, it means the plot of land. In the Arab culture, when we refer to the plot of land, we used to refer to it as my earth. So this is the love that to earth is to land. Our love to art, to our art, is bigger than our hatred to our enemy. So this is why we will win, because we fight for love and for the love of our art. In this project, I tried to materialize my dreams. And in 2002, so in terms of material, I went to the apartheid wall, the huge concrete, 740 kilometers, which is like 400 miles of concrete, gray concrete, ugly. And I chisel away pieces with my hands and a hammer. And I took those pieces to my studio, like talking to them. And literally, like they spent like weeks in my studio. I want to transform them into something. And I had the chance to show an artwork at the FIAC, and I said, okay, this is what I will show. I will show those pieces. And I formed them, or I morphed those objects into concrete pieces. And I showed them, and they were like Christmas cake. They were sellable, and I made some good amount of money. And I bought a land in 2016. So that was my dream, to have a land, and I am fucking poor, or I was, and I'm not poor anymore. No, I'm still, come on. And last year, I was really like so investing into show the olive oil project, and I call it Unknown Olive Oil, and I show it here at the first art fair. And this year, I am continuing, and I'm showing the trees, and they are the tree of life. Yes, so in terms of like space, like the few days ago, I did a performance, and after that, I got really so stoned. And I was thinking, what the hell I'm doing in this city? This city is so beautiful, full of love, and full of like harshness, excuse my English. But I figured out, because I'm here in this city, I'm in different time, that I lived 18 years in my hometown, Jenin, where I was born. I lived 22 years in Hebron, where I studied interior design. I lived 2 years in Nazareth, where I worked as a carpenter. I lived 25 years in Ramallah, where I worked as like in the army at the Presidential Guard with Arafat, Abbas, George Bush Sr. And I lived 3 years in New York. So I feel like in terms of the space, New York also gave me the space and the powerhouse to think about clay as a material, where I wanted this space to go back to some of the roots of the ancestors about like the connection to earth and the love to earth from a matriarchal perspective, because matriarchy, they see earth as us. We are extended to her, and she is embodying our pain and love. Like that was one of the pieces is called an orange tree with 2 scars. And I think that's it. Thank you.
I think that there is a great opportunity here to somehow react on what we have been talking about till now. I'm an architect. I'm born Tunisian. I'm also Portuguese. I've been living in 3 continents, and I speak 6 languages. I think that space is built up with really simple elements. I used to say that you have to be as materialistic as possible to have the space for the other to build up together, since I am, again, an architect. And I think when I, for example, hear Khaled and his way to build up his discourse, he's kind of repeating this idea of construction of space. Space, for me, is super relative. It depends on a lot of things, but I think that we need really little to build up a space, and we need really simple elements to make this space shared with somebody else. I mean, the materialistic part, or the materiality of it, materialistic in a psychoanalyst way, but material as materials we use to fabric something. Personally, I think that are the second, let's say, element to build up a space. We can build up a space by putting a rug and having somebody in front of it, in front of us. Practicing architecture allowed me a lot to somehow understand that by sharing something, you start by building a space. Then if it comes to materiality of a space, for example, the experience we made together with Wuzlat, I think that is kind of starting point, really interesting one, of how, at least I consider, maybe not the right, but the word, it's not the right, but the opportunity to talk and react and build up a space is by gathering, and also by hearing the person you have in front. I mean, I think that it's what Khaled made, for example, gave me the opportunity to build up this space on mind. He was talking about this sequentiality of spaces. I believe that we are like that, and also the space we constructed, like with a long-term relationship with different spaces. And memory is also built up with space. It's super important. I mean, I don't think that space would be existing without this memory. So what Khaled was somehow doing is this process of building up something that allowed him to have his own space. And I think that this relationship is super important to highlight somehow for us as human beings.
Absolutely. Just picking up some threads, I mean, I guess one thing I'm thinking about, just in response to what you just said, Sana, is also the potential of material transformation. You know, I'm thinking of the concrete football, Khaled, but I'm also thinking of the trophies that you made, Jean, where they become monuments for immigrant labor. So is there some sort of relationship between, let's say, some sort of ancestral intelligence that all of us hold in our bodies as we engage with these materials, but also how that begins to, in some ways, encounter the potential for material transformation? Because I guess all of us have to maintain the hope for freedom dreams of various forms. And if our freedom dreams have to be built materially, how do they basically build on these ancestral knowledge systems? Any of you can jump in.
Hi. So in terms of material, like in my childhood, like my mom, she kept the news paper that I was in the newspaper for the first time when I was 16 years old, because I was making sculptures from olive wood, and I was making the map, so I was making some political stuff, and I was making a heart with letters to sell to my children in school. And then I end up like making them with somebody with his letter jewelry. But I came far from art, and I went to the presidential guard, so as a work to find job. And then when I start going back to art, I went into more like public space. So I wasn't looking for material. I was using my body as material, as a performance. I went to Wall Street selling my blood. My first exhibition was at the checkpoint. So material was never something like when I started like my art career that I looked for. I believe the material, like we found each other in another time, which is here in New York, like because like that material, the concrete was enforced on my body, my visual, that I hate that material. I transformed them into pop art objects, and they were sellable by chance. I didn't really plan that. It was the circumstances just played with me and helped me somehow. And it was totally intuitive. And then when you go to the art market, like Frieze and Art Fair and FIAC, like I believe, like literally, that my mind, my heart got little corrupted because I was looking for a material to sell and to sell and to sell and to make more money. And then I said, no, I need to go to art school. So I went to art school thinking that art school will help me, and no, it didn't help me. And then no, it really, like it destroyed you. I don't want to say the word fuck your mind, but it does. And like I went back to Palestine after the art school, and I said, I'm done. I'm tired from art, from everything. I want to be in my land with my trees. I was working with them, bringing them black goat shit, feeding them, and they brought me. They start like transforming. I see the green of them, so I was super happy there. And then I was in love. I came here. I stuck in New York, and then I'm in my studio, like thinking, and then I literally found Powerhouse, and I found clay as a material that helped me to go back to my own intuitive like connection to land that I love. And I lately think that I'm not here forever. I'm here for maybe another 2 years. The next one I'll be with you, and then the one after. But after that, you will be with me in my land in Ramallah. Literally, this is my plan. And I will have just goats and a horse and keep taking care of my olive trees. I'm taking care of them from distance. And the reason is, like, I just brought my boys here in November. They just moved from Palestine to here. So I have this responsibility to take care of the boys for the next 2 years, and then I will be done from here. And you're all welcome to come and to really feed the goats and collect the olives, and we'll make more clay in my land. That's my dream. And I made my dreams. The biggest dream in my life was to own a land. And I made that dream, and I can make the dream I want. And I was born between the river and the sea, and I will be back to live by the river and the sea. Thank you so much.
I will jump in if you want. If we talked about material or materiality of things, again, I consider myself somebody who comes from like more global Southern vision, where I don't like the word, but resilience, working in the process, having the fits, like grounding in the ground and being at the present is quite of the process or the tools to make things happen. After studying and like working in different parts of the northern part of the globe, I realized I had something that were more related to rather the southern way to look at the world. And then I started to see kind of common things between the global south. I'm currently based in Mexico City. And Mexico is a big lab of materialities, from trash to plastic to a lot of layers of really interesting things. And then also we have the great opportunity still to have people who works with their hands and being surrounded by artisans that really knows better than whatever about everything and how to make things happening. I think that materiality for me started to be really important since the moment I understood that by doing and not, and how to say it, and not just projecting and conceptualizing things, that we can learn, and then we can also kind of materialize something that is important for the rest, whether human or non-human. Then, the second level of my work started to be also involved with this idea of neo-materiality, neo-vernacularities, how we can, what we call nowadays upcycling, recycling, and so on. If we look at the history of architecture, especially the ones pre-industrial, pre-extractivism systems, where somehow human was part of an ecosystem and not the center of it, I realized that this global south I'm talking about is literally having this added value where we still behave in an ecosystem and react to it to extract something that maybe is not part of the land. It's like it's not fossil oil. It's not something that it would be having a negative impact on the ecosystem or the environment, whatever, but rather by understanding these processes and re-injecting it on nowadays architecture, maybe I can do something else. So in Locus, our office, where I co-founded with another friend, Swiss guy, so it's Tunisian with a Swiss in Mexico City. We started to practice this, what we called ecolocalism, which is basically looking at this process of reusing something to rebuild with it. We ended up doing zero waste restaurant that went kind of viral, and then we started to do building for the governments with the materials we have 100 kilometers around. So we settled matrix of system where the process is based on the material you have around. So let's say that my DNA, my locus, that's why we call it locus, is based on this approach. And it's so interesting to look at, let's say, the building around through the materials and materialities. So you can literally, if you start to scan the facade of every single building around, even the auto construction, you literally understand the map of a lot of things. The map of from where the materials are coming, why are they around, what kind of level in terms of labors and so on you have, the knowledge and the connection with the ecosystem you have around, and also this level of disconnection the human being had for so long, and let's say modern, from like late 20s to now at least, with the school of Le Corbusier, for example, and this idea of that comfort, thermal one, energetical one, light ones, whatever, allowed us to disconnect from what is inside and outside. So, by shifting the light, I am fully aware about my space, but I don't look outside, I don't feel outside. Coming back to this question, I think that materiality for me is like kind of the central process in our work. And I am looking now at a new generation of architects, artists, designers who are coming back to this, because we are saturated about, we are shifting. I think that we are really going into really interesting moment where we are re-questioning this production of let's say, modern architecture and going to this reconnection to the land or to the ecosystem we have run.
Yeah, I think your question was really related to ancestry, right? And I might share a project that I have on display at Greenwood Cemetery. They just opened Greenhouse as well. And both projects really deal with my ancestry very directly in ways that it hasn't before. But Korean bury their dead in mound forms with earth as opposed to a flat graveyard. And to me, that struck me as I was walking through Greenwood, that we honor the dead in different ways and different cultures. So I made a huge mound to bury discarded trees on site that lived and died on Greenwood. So it's a 125 feet burial site to ceremonially bring honor to this tree that has passed, and for us to ritualistically return to this mound that will be a pollinator native garden meadow. So those are projects where I'm thinking how when I got to a cemetery that's so sacred in New York, but actually didn't speak to my ancestry at all, that I wanted to reinsert how we would think about our past elders, and they would always be there greeting us, and we would return to the site annually on the day that they passed, because we continue, right? So this like leaving of a next generation, right? So I'm always thinking about what do you leave behind, not just how did you live, right? And then indoor in the gallery are Korean celadon, which is Korean ceramics, and that's an art form in Korea that is so prized for its perfection, because it's so hard to make, that for over 1,000+ years, the artisans who are typically male potters will create this form, and anything that's less than perfect is destroyed by the artists. And I think that as a maker, they would destroy 40 to 60% of their fabrication. So if a powerhouse, that would be bad odds for a fabrication lab. But that's because they were aiming for such perfection. And I swept in and saw these mounds of broken ceramics and said, yet they're still beautiful. They just can't pour tea. They just can't serve to be a teacup or some sort of functional form. So exporting the ceramic waste to New York City to make public works, to honor like a Flushing, Queens, a community that is so diasporically driven by Koreans outside Korea. And yet you feel like you're in Seoul. So I said, what gift can I give you except the most prized celadon, but in broken pieces, right? And so the remaking of what is broken and not seeing it as broken, as seeing it as connected. So I sit here today thinking I am very connected to my Korean diaspora, Korean ancestry, and yet I'm speaking English here, having a conversation at Powerhouse, new forms, new identities, So I think that transformation happens, right? We're reminded of things, and yet it's a critique of how sometimes old ways aren't the best. And then sometimes you come to a new place and go, there are other ways to do things. So I think this kind of back and forth conversation about reclaiming some of those ancestral ideas, and the good ones that stick, and the good ones you want to carry forward, and then also abandoning ones that don't work.
If you guys wanted to add about ancestors, or we can, okay, so first of all, I'm trying to connect between the three practices, which are very different, so feel free to disagree with me. But I do feel like there's some sort of vibration that we're all trying to pick up too, At least for me, personally speaking, I think clearly it is an incredibly dark time in the world. That's where I think a lot of us are returning to forms of intelligence beyond the human, I think Khaled, I'm thinking about the olive tree, for example, or the bird that's on the Palestinian state stamp. But I'm also thinking about, the muscles that you were engaging with. And yeah, I feel like somehow by decentering the human and really, or refusing the separation between the human body and the ecology, it moves us to other forms of liberatory practice, that are actually much more fluid and much more robust in relation to these fascist regimes that we're dealing with. So, yeah, I guess in a kind of roundabout way, I'm trying to understand how picking up some of those vibrations beyond the human informs your creative practice.
I can start with it. I said at the beginning of this conversation that I consider myself a quite materialistic person. I disconnect. I mean, I am a really hybrid of science and maybe learning from the past thing, but I like this position of analyzing the things with facts. And at the same time, lately, I think that in the last 10 years of my practice, I started to realize that I'm keener to act of repair or reconnection or reconsidering things instead of aligning to a discourse that was more into the abundance and to the massive production and so on and so on. Last year, we presented a project at the Venice Biennial. We represented Mexico with a really kind of something that I think represent me, not only about my way to produce as an architect, whatever, but also represent what you are talking about of this trial of reconnection with something bigger or deeper than the last almost 80 years of human lives we got. No? The project was called Chinampa Veneta. I don't know if all of you, I will quickly say what is Chinampa, but basically it's a system, agriculture one, from Mexico City, created by man with zero footprint and unbelievably massive production. It's a kind of island similar to Venice, and it's one of the few examples where you can see human with, let's say, plants and other species around, where the human is part of something, part of, again, an ecosystem, but also part with this idea of being part and not considering himself the center of it. And I think that at least what we are trying right now to come back to maybe is this will, and I see it on the Gen Z generation, unbelievable that I have as students of mine. It's like this commitment to understand that there is no other choice than being part of something which is basically ruined by the last generation. It's a position that someone take care of. It's like saying that there is a limit, there is a kind of sort of limitation of a lot of things, and I decide as a person to come back to this randomness of not having the control and not being the center, and understanding that even though we got the power above a lot of things, we got COVID hit and antibiotic didn't work out and we don't have the control. So I think that it's more than being lost. I think that it's really interesting, again, shift of paradigms where we see the position of some sort of part which is smaller and smaller again and again. No, I think that in the future it would be, we will see it more. But this first option where everybody wants to continue as if it's, everything was similarly, and you have few of them that wants to have the power about the other. And then the other one is like this consciousness that we are collective, that we are rooted in something that it's has an end, which is the planet Earth or the where we live around. But then it's not a romanticism to come back to the past, but like to create hybrids. Coming back to the example I gave of the chinampa, what we made in Venice was an example of saying, okay, if Musk is saying that we have to go to Mars to produce and have another planet because Earth is not any more interesting, we are just showing that it's the completely opposite. We have been looking at something surrounding us for more than 2,000 years that is impressively productive, impressively respecting a lot of elements that we need, water, soil, the regenerative system, and also it's quite democratic because even the plants decide who will be surviving or not. When I first came and I started to look at the chinampas, I was kind of hipster person, completely romantic, looking at, oh, this is so beautiful, this is so wonderful, this is so exotic. But then when I decided to start to understand and to analyze it as a scientific system, I was completely amazed. I was like, it's how you can learn of sort of learning from a lot of impressive tools that we just took away. And nowadays we made the kind of Frankenstein actually that works inside doors and inside of a biennial. And we had plants living for almost 6 months with the hybrid system we made from this vernacular system and an ecosystem that was surrounding us for a long time. I believe that this is the way. And some sort of, from that, I reground and like I have a purpose. And I'm full of positive, like solution for the generation coming, the Gen Z that are asking every single day for new solution and systems.
I might echo some of the sentiment about working so deeply with science, and I collaborate often with scientists and try to amplify the research that they're doing, and they're not just watching biodiversity and species loss just happen. They're really intentionally trying to change a system at work. And so working with the freshwater mussels was the water department who wants fresh water like all of us, but they're starting with freshwater mussels because they can procreate, like in a lab, the native species. And they've been successful in taking 2 of the 12 left in the rivers and breeding them. And so that to me was, wow, this is brilliant. You're doing more than what nature is able to do because we're so putting them under threat, you know? So they can't do this without us, you know? So I think that's an interesting conversation about how, you know, working with ecosystems in that respect. It's like, how do you rebuild it, repair it? How do you remake it, you know, so that it's more robust? And for me, the art part is also showing the consequences of how, if we don't do it, and our past history has shown in industrial extractive ways, like because we wanted a button, we have devastated ecosystems all over the world of, you know, mollusks, you know, who would be filtering our water and giving life to fish and the whole waterway. And yet, because we wanted a button, you know, it was so prized and so amazing until plastics came, you know? So we're just substituting one thing for another, but our one obsession could destroy our, you know, water health, you know? And obviously, we all depend on that, you know? And we could go without a button.
Yeah, I really love what Senna said about the 4 elements. And and Powerhouse, they add another weight on my shoulder, artist, poet. I'm not a poet, but now I need to be. But I wrote a poem for, I'm not a poet. But I wrote a little small, like, words about how I feel lately in relation to the work I'm doing, because like this work has a lot of like childhood play in the studio, and I'm really, really, really like so blessed by my mom's prayer every morning that I had a studio residency that was just created for me at the Can Factory. So I'm having studio from this like brother, Jewish, Hasidic, Nathan, who's not here, but it's across the street. And he's the one, he told me, like, go to Powerhouse, they will help you to fabricate your work. I came here, I wrote them an email, and Alejandra, she called me, like, what do you mean by this? What do you mean by this? So I was like, oh, no. So my email was really fucked up. And she didn't understand anything, but she was so supportive. Like, she helped me, like, and she wrote all the notes, and then they called me for a meeting, and then they gave me the subsidy award, and I was producing the work. And to honor them, I will write this poem, because when you talk about the ancestors, like I really also believe that clay as a material give us wisdom, because the clay is us, and the wisdom I got from my grandmother, who lost all of her land, and she was a refugee displaced in another city from Haifa to Arrani to Jenin. I was once like, this is the place where I get the most joy, when I am climbing a tree. This is like, lately I'm like really, I find my joy with trees, especially the olive trees. And like lately I stole an olive tree from a fancy like Italian restaurant in Williamsburg, because that guy didn't respect her. He left her outside as an aesthetic in the snow, and she was literally freezing to death. And I saw her like crumbling, and saw her leaves like shrinking, and I was literally sad on her. I was like, Khaled, focus. You have a studio, go to your studio, leave her alone. This is not your business. Go. I cannot help myself. It's me. I am something wrong with my mind. So I met a girl, and in our first day, I was like explaining her about my sadness and about my dramatic day, week of the tree. And she said to me, let's take her. And she brought her car. She hid 2 blocks. I gave her direction on the map. I told you, I served in the military, so I know how to hide. So I got my baklava merino wool, hide my face, have 2 eyes, covered everything, and I walked. I carried her, and I carried the olive tree. She was heavy. And I carried her 2 blocks. We put her in the car. I brought her to the studio. I wrote a poem about her. And she reminded me also of my grandmother. When we were collecting the harvesting, I cut one of the branches, and she said, what are you doing? You cannot cut the branch like this. You collect the olives by hand, one by one. And I said, why do you care? It's not even your olives. Your olives is gone. She said to me, if you don't respect the tree, the nature will not give you peace in your death. And we will all back to where we came from as clay. We are all made from clay. We will go back there. And for me personally, I would love to go back there where earth will hug me and make me, like, treat me like a seed. And then when I crack, when you brought a seed on the ground, you water it, you crack, it's a tree. I want to be a tree. I want to be a bird, whatever. So before us was the clay. After us, the clay remains. Between the fire and the water that forges the pottery, we are but a single fleeting breath. And I'm inspired by all the wisdom of our ancestors from now to 8,000 before the Christ, from Ishtar, goddess of the Mesopotamia, who is the symbol of materiality against patriarchic, like dynamic power, which is like the warmongers who create those phallic objects, bullets, to kill us all, here, there, wherever. The ones who create bullets, they create them to dominate and control our bodies. So let's free our bodies and stop this like hate and killing and grow more trees. Thank you.
Hi. I have a question regarding, it's not regarding trees, unfortunately. It's regarding the, you're in this shooting range and there's a rifle on the table and you have a cup in your hand. Can you elaborate on that, please? Thank you.
Yes, I was sitting in the desert of Tucson outside the city limit, so I can use an AR-15 with live ammunition without permission from the police. And I put a desk and a chair, and I was drinking American coffee and donuts, shooting at targets, its color, and I was creating painting. And the performance called, I am good at shooting, bad at painting. Sorry? I think yards. It was 50 meters. Yards, how many yards that's?
Anybody?
50.
Anybody good at math? 50 yards, 50 meters?
I think the same. And yeah, it was intentional because I was like, at that time, Obama was talking about the collateral damage when he was the one like enforcing and pushing the drones industry complex, and the drones will go to bomb people in Yemen, in Iraq, in Africa, and with a drone controlled by a soldier in his own AC office in Nevada desert.
But Emanuel, I am incredibly curious on how you feel about all of these topics just discussed, particularly about ancestral memory as it relates to place and materiality. We saw that you are an architect, an urbanist, a professor. How does it show? I used to be in academia, and I'm curious how it shows up even in the classroom, and what you hope to impart to hopefully be seeds elsewhere.
Wow. That's a very hard question. Yeah, I mean, I think I'll just say this is what I love doing. I mean, basically, there are a set of questions that I'm trying to work through on my own. I moved to the US when I was 15 from Ethiopia, so I think a lot of my work is about me trying to get back home and failing to do so. That's where I think some of my interest in the animism of the ground or knowledge systems that my ancestors have passed on to my parents, through everyday rituals in Ethiopia are somehow registering in the stuff that we're doing in the practice. And I think when it comes to teaching, it usually shows up in something similar to this, where we have a common question that allows us to reconnect to those knowledge systems that have been erased, I mean, just adding to what Sana was saying, I think the biggest lie that the modern project has told us is that we are in control. We've never been in control, So I think some of it is really about learning that or at least unlearning, the feeling of control and finding other ways to live together on this planet.
Hi, my name's John. I'm not sure this is a question, but my wife happens to be Korean, and I spend some time in Seoul, and you were talking about breaking of ceramics. I happen to be a ceramic sculptor as well, so lots of connections. And it reminded me, I was taught or suggested to me not to throw anything away. And that has served me well over time. I had an experience, though, where I had a piece that I had made, anagama piece, that was, I thought, the pinnacle of my work and so precious, and it fell and broke. And then I took the pieces, and I was in tears, and I took the pieces And I put them into a plexiglass box with black sand, and I put it back together in a shape, just very spontaneously. And I find it personally, whatever anyone else thinks, to be my most treasured work. And so I had this identification. So the accidental art is just a comment that I wanted to make. And then, Khaled, I just wanted to say, authenticity is an overused word these days, but I honor your authenticity and your communication.
So thank you all so much.